Tucker is one of the most dangerous people in conservative media. Watch what happens in the next few years. This man is extremely dangerous. This is going to produce the most angry, dangerous, right-wing young men you've ever seen. It's going to be a backlash of men who've been just beat up their entire young life. They're going to look for anyone who doesn't hate them.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Western Spirit here from Israel. I'm Ariel Whitman, and today with me, I have Joel Berry. So first of all, Joel is to remind me, the managing editor of the Babylon Bee. And we had Seth Dillon on of the Babylon Bee, so we're familiar and we love your guys' stuff. But also, Joel is someone who I've learned to know and respect from X. I'm a passive X user, pretty much. Once in a while, I'll retweet something, but mostly just reading interesting people, and you're one of them. And I think a lot of the stuff that you put are stuff that resonate with me because you're going a lot of times against, I guess, the grain and against like the what's in, so to speak.
The spirit of the age, we call it.
Exactly. So that's one of the things. So first of all, welcome to talking with me. It's amazing having you.
Thank you.
And we'll get into all that, but I want to ask you first of all. So we're sitting here we're recording this on Wednesday night, and everyone is talking in Israel about the fact that the U.S. might attack Iran, and then we've been told here, like, get ready, charge all your electronics, get water into the safe rooms and the bomb shelters because of the Iranian response, if and when the U.S. decides to help out the protesters, the brave protesters there. And so, but my first question to you is, we've been, since October 7th, seeing all these giant protests in America. They really hate us, the left, but increasingly also the right, and we'll talk about that. But none of these people are protesting for the Iranians that are literally being butchered as we speak. And no one is out there on the streets for them, except for, Iranian, people from Iran and some of my friends that went to protest with the Iranians, but nothing like we've seen over the past 2.5 years.
Yeah, well, it's an insane inconsistency, a cognitive dissonance that you see on the left, and this is something that I've always pointed out, especially within feminism on the left. The thing that you see a lot here in the States is feminists dressing up in their Handmaid's Tale outfits, talking about how conservatives are going to oppress them, and I'm thinking, the Handmaid's Tale already exists, guys. It's in Iran, it's in Saudi Arabia. But when it comes to the oppression of radical Islam, of women, of minorities, religious and otherwise, human rights activists on the left, feminists on the left are silent. And I think the main reason is because radical Islam is a co-belligerent with the left against Western civilization. They have a common enemy. They don't have anything in common with each other except for the fact that they hate the West, they hate America, they hate Christianity, they hate Judaism, and so for now they are allies, and for that reason there are a lot of powerful voices really pushing for the United States to stay out of Iran. They want the Ayatollah in charge. They want radical Islam to continue to be a force against the West, and so my prayer right now, is that Trump would not listen to those voices that may or may not be whispering in his ear right now. Obviously, I don't know. I'm not an insider, but I pray that he does the right thing, because the right thing is very clear to anyone who's paying attention.
Yeah, and I would just say on that note that Judith Butler, after October 7th, a video emerged from one of the rounds of war that happened with Hamas or Hezbollah. I don't remember, that she was in some symposium. She is the prophet of the queer movement, pretty much, the feminist / queer movement, third wave, whatever. I don't even know, whatever. So she's like considered this big, culture warrior for them. And she said in this, she was asked about Hamas and Hezbollah and how they, I guess, fit into her worldview, because they're fighting the Jews, I guess, the colonialists, but on the other hand, they're Islamists. And she said, no, Hamas and Hezbollah are integral parts of the feminist struggle. And pretty much I think that's her exact quote, but we'll put it up on the description if people ask. And I think that makes a lot of sense, in the sense that for them, it's all all of these words are just to tear down the West. It's not to actually, at least for the intellectual ones of them, not the
Yes.
people on the street that may not know. They're just part of the crowd. They're just sheep, so to speak.
Yeah, well, because this is what the left does. This is what Marxism does. Is when they're trying to infiltrate a host country, they are like a virus or a parasite. They'll infiltrate a country, and they will use the values of that country against them. So in the United States, we believe in equality for women and religious and ethnic minorities, and so that's why you have feminism, which claims to be about equality for women, is nothing more than a Marxist front against the West. You have uh, you know, all these racial movements for racial equality for minorities that are just fronts for the Marxist war against the West. And so, and what that has kind of produced, unfortunately, on the right, is that since the left has become so good at disguising itself as American values, as good values, there are some fools on the right who have decided to reject those values altogether because they've kind of fallen for that leftist disguise, and that's where you have kind of this new right springing up that is rejecting freedom, democracy, liberty, equality, all those things that we stand for here in the West. They're rejecting it and going back to tribalism and monarchy and whatever else.
Wait, I'm going to get to that with you. I just want to first cover I guess, the current events and basically from the left to the right, because I think looks like President Trump's going to make the right decision and help these people. And I just think also that we should also put out there, and tell me if you agree with me, that the all these nonstop comparisons to like Iraq and Afghanistan are people are lying to the American people on that sense, because no
Yes,
one is talking about like a full-fledged ground invasion of Iran,
yes,
or what they did in Venezuela. No one was talking about, no one is even like, it's not even on the radar, something similar to Iraq. And yet they
yes,
keep on bringing it up in this to lie, basically, so that it's
yeah,
a binary option. It's either you don't do anything or you go all the way in and conquer this giant country and
yes,
control it for years. That's not the
yeah,
binary. You can do a lot of stuff in between, like we saw in the 12-day war. One
yeah.
sortie of planes goes back, and that's it. It's over. Like, and all these people that wrote things, this was going to be World War III and all these things. I
Hmm.
think we should put out that it's just lying to people.
Yes, that is something that is. I mean, Americans are really afraid of another 20-year quagmire. I understand it. I was an infantry marine. I was in Fallujah from 2006 to 2007. I was in the military, from the Bush administration to the Obama administration. I saw how things changed, so I understand the fear of wasting American, blood and treasure in a pointless war in the Middle East. But you're exactly right that there's a lot of fear mongering going on. That if we do anything to help Iran, it's going to turn into another quagmire. I think another point that needs to be made too is that it really does matter who is in charge during these sorts of things. Um, even the regime change that we did in Iraq, for example, under Bush, people forget it actually was going pretty well. Um, I hesitate to say that because that's kind of a verboten thing to say, but it was kind of going pretty well until Obama took over and completely undid all of the work that had been done over there. Completely undid it all, and it was a tragic thing to see. Um, and so, with someone like Trump, a guy who knows how to win and knows how to negotiate and knows how to be a bully to the bad guys, um, you can kind of have a little more confidence that a little bit of intervention where needed is going to be okay. He's not gonna get us get up thousands of people killed like someone like Obama would.
Yeah, and he has a track record at this point. We can see
Hmm.
Venezuela, the Iran, Soleimani, all these, Nigeria now. He's not sending over like they're not capturing the soil, so to speak. They're doing it
Yeah.
precision stuff. They're extracting Maduro and leaving. They're not staying there.
Yeah.
I guess that's
And
the
we
main thing that I think. Yeah.
And we have Marco Rubio. He's our secret weapon. You know, he can run any country that we if we depose their leader, he can run anything in the meantime.
Yes.
So I if he has to run Iran in the meantime until we get good leadership in there, I think he'd do a great job.
Yeah. Well, and so now I want to talk to you about the thing you brought up so after October 7th, we saw, again, like I said, the protesters and all these people, and a lot of American Jews. My family is in a lot of it is in the US. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York in a Hasidic family. The whole uniform, not with that anymore. But but so they looked at the Democrats who have been pretty much totally captured by their crazies. And they
Hmm.
said the Democrats now, not all Jews still vote majority Democrat because for them, that's just my opinion, those Jews, a lot of them, for them, it's more important to be a Democrat than to be Jewish or to be
Mm,
I would say a woke progressive. But
mm.
whatever. Maybe I'm not sure. Are there any more moderate Dems? There are there are
There's two or three maybe.
they're yeah, they're a shrinking minority. So
Yes.
my point is a lot of Jews, my friends, people who are especially people who are Orthodox Jews looked and were like, the Republicans might be we should go there now. And then
Mm,
suddenly it made sense. But now, like you said, you have this offshoot of, I think for me, it started with Tucker, who there's always been crazy, but he has such a big platform. And he
yeah.
has like, I think 18 million people on X, and he started off at Fox. So he brings that credibility that he brought from Fox to the table. I'm not sure it works anymore, but at least that's how it started. And
Hmm.
he really, I have friends that are like, we're not going to vote for Republicans anymore. Even we won't go to vote or we'll vote for
Yeah.
the Democrat because this is scaring us. So, how
Hmm.
do you, as someone who really is trying to push back, first of all, why do you think this is happening? Why is this getting so much traction and support?
Hmm.
Or maybe it isn't. I don't know. How do you look at this whole thing?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things, and I think some of it is real and some of it is fake. In other words, it's co-opted, it's funded, it's a psyop. But the real part, I think, comes from a few things. One of them being this younger generation of men that has grown up under the woke regime, and I'm 39 years old, and my jaw hits the floor when I talk to a kid who's in college who like was born after 9/11. I just can't even my brain can't I can't wrap my brain around that, you know. And so you have a generation of young men who grew up in the woke regime, and I used to say this all the time when we would see public schools decorated in rainbow flags, pride flags, young men being told that whiteness was evil, that all of the problems in the world were caused by white men. I mean, 5, 6 years back, I was warning, like, this is going to produce the most, like, angry, dangerous, right-wing young men you've ever seen. It's gonna be a backlash. Men who've been like just beat up their entire young life. They're gonna look for anyone who doesn't hate them. And who's that gonna be? It's gonna be Nick Fuentes, it's gonna be Tucker Carlson, it's gonna be the people who say, you know, you have been abused and there's nothing wrong with you. And and they're open to radicalization that way. And so, so there is a little bit of that going on. Um, the other thing, obviously, with COVID, with the way our institutions and our experts were completely um, just disgraced. A lot of people feel like they've been lied to by so many people for so long. What that kind of naturally led into was just questioning everything. You know, there's this idea on the right of the post-war consensus. This idea that in 1960, you know, America was hypnotized into believing in racial equality and not hating Jews. But before that, when everything was normal, you know, I- and so there's that narrative, and that's why they're called the woke right. Why we call them the woke right is they kind of have this new critical theory that instead of people being hypnotized by by whiteness, or heteronormativity. They've been hypnotized by the post-war consensus, you know. Um, and so there's a little bit of that at play. I do think that, and I pray that the majority of this is a function of young men who are, you know, foolish and inexperienced, and they'll grow out of it when they kind of get into the real world. The way a lot of young liberals kind of become more conservative as they live in the real world. But the other half of this is, I think that there's a lot of money that has been poured into this conversation online by China, by Russia, by Qatar, by Iran, to make it seem like there's this huge rising tide. And I felt it. You know, sometimes I feel like I'm the only sane person left in the world, and that's by design. They want you to think that you're the only sane person left, um, or at least the only person who you know, loves Israel, who has affection for the Jews, you know, believes in racial equality, things like that. So um, I think that, and it seems to almost already be happening with the weakening of Iran. Just in the last week, it seems like I'm suddenly able to reply to groypers, and I can ratio a groyper. That was unheard of a month ago. And so I don't know what's going on. I don't know if the Chinese have stopped funding their bots, or if Iran is just too distracted with putting down the protests right now. But it does seem like the tide is turning a little bit, which is very
Yeah.
encouraging.
By the way, I just want to say that about the Chinese and the bots, that my friend, a acquaintance of mine, it has a think tank that studies China-Israel relations, and she has written a paper explaining that in the last few weeks the Chinese have put less and less money into the bots that have been spreading anti-Israel, anti-Semitic, because they're trying to now play both sides. They're trying to actually
Amazing.
be friendly a little more to the Israelis, so they want to show that they're a little less doing the dirty work online. So maybe we'll interview her, because it's very interesting. You know, a lot of this is very astroturf, like you say. But I guess we saw, for example, at the TPUSA Amfest, I think it's called, conference.
Yeah,
So you saw those two strains. I think it was encouraging in the sense that when Ben Shapiro gave his amazing speech,
incredible.
the crowd basically went crazy for it. And then when Tucker Carlson gave his response speech,
It
first of all, it was a very bad speech. Like, there
was
was
bad.
nothing there, and it was weird and very off-putting, I think, even if you agree with him. But and it a lot less applause, but there was applause. So I
Hmm.
think it showed the two sides. So even if we think there's a lot of astroturfing, a lot of bots and all that, there is a movement, big or small, that's there.
Yeah.
And I guess what's really annoying to me was that during the last election, and even before that, they would say about Trump supporters, you're all Nazis, you're all Hitler supporters, you're fascists. And then the Republicans would all say, oh, and rightly so, from my opinion, you're all like, everyone's a Nazi to you. Everyone's a Nazi. We're not Nazi. We're just conservatives, you know?
Yeah.
And then it turns out some of us are Nazis on the right. And like, so I guess everything that you said makes sense. The
Hmm.
only thing that doesn't make sense is why the end result of it is to be a Nazi in whatever shape or form. I mean, like a Groiper or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's true. Woke culture and all these institutions were really against white, straight men, especially if you're religious Christian, especially.
Hmm.
Like, you're the worst of the worst, Joel. But but my point is, like, why does that mean that your solution to that is to then hate Jews and blacks? Like, why is
Yeah.
that the leap? Your solution should be to stop that and be a meritocratic society and return to Christian ideals, whatever it is.
Hmm.
Instead, you go to, like, oh, they hate me, so now I'm going to hate everyone that doesn't look like me.
Yeah.
Why is
Well,
that?
yeah, yeah, I mean, part of that, I think it's just the human condition. Um, I think it's also kind of the default for cultures who are losing their way and who are losing their faith to go after the Jews. I mean, the Jews are they've kind of always been like this canary in the coal mine, that when a culture starts to lose its faith in God, when Christians stop reading the Bible and stop going to church and stop really understanding what what Jesus said and what the scriptures say, both Old and New Testament, it just that's kind of like the what everyone ends up defaulting to. And I think I mean, it's because the Jews are kind of like at the center of the human story. You know, um, the the creation story and the flood story, and God choosing a people for Himself at Mount Sinai, and giving us the Messiah through the Jewish people. It all centers around the Jews, and so that's eventually it's like no matter what your conversation's about, like if you keep going long enough, you're going to end up at the Jews in one way or another. And so, um, I think that it's sad, and I think that the hope to turn this around, at least in the United States, is for America to find true faith again, for us to return
Yes, to
to
church.
Jesus and to church and to the Bible.
Yeah.
Um, because if you're, like me, I was raised steeped in the Old Testament. I know all the stories by heart, and so I feel it. If I may, I feel so much kinship with the Jewish people because their story, in so many ways, is my story as a Christian, struggling with God, disobeying God again and again, yet God is faithful to me again and again. And so, um, I think the more people are can get back into the Word as they should, and really hide it in their hearts, as David said, um, a lot of that will go just naturally go away. You can't have hate in your heart while following God. It's not possible.
And by the way, the Manhattan Institute on that note had a poll, which is very interesting. And it showed that first of all, the more Christian you identify as, the less you hate Israel and the Jews of Republican voters. And the more you're not a new voter, meaning if you're a traditional Republican voter, then you'll hate Israel and the Jews much less. And if you're new and less Christian, those are the people that are turning away from the Jews and the Jewish state. So it's interesting that the more religious you are, the more friendly to Jewish people you are. And because usually when you talk to a secular Jew, their automatic reaction is to say, the crazy Christians, they hate us because they want us all to be Christian. And the secular ones, those are the ones we can talk to. But I think it's the opposite we've seen over the past 5, 6 years, especially since October the 7th, when, I mean, all of the progressive allies of the Jewish woke uh,
Hmm.
establishment turned their backs on the Jews.
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
that's just
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. And
Um,
but the thing that's frustrating though too is that, at least online, you do get this. I think it's somewhat of a mirage of this Christian branded hatred towards the Jews. You Nick Fuentes and his groypers that chanting Christ is King, and there's that is, I think, what raises my ire more than anything else as a Christian, is seeing God's name used in vain that way. Um, and I think a lot of it is, again, just kind of a bit of a cultural backlash to wokeness. I think a lot of these young men who are kind of finding Christianity as a prop or a totem for their right wing politics. I think they'll either fall away from the church, or they will lean into it and leave their extremist politics behind. But you can't hold on to both for very long.
Joel, can I talk to you also about I don't want to dwell too much, but the phenomena of Fuentes slash Candace Owens. I don't think they fall in the category we've talked about of like the Tucker Carlson wing of the things, because they are like really crazy. I mean, if
Yeah.
you look like someone who says he loves Hitler and someone who says like he loves Stalin and Hitler
Hmm.
is and has all these personal stuff that are just weird, and it's just a weird person in general. And then also Candace, after Charlie Kirk, is like not just, I think we can say, like, at least what she's promoting is evil. Like she's putting
Yeah.
people through very bad, just bad personal, like, put politics aside, it's just hurting people for no reason really, except for just clicks. Why do
Hmm.
you think? So one of the things that people told me was people watch it because it's sort of like watching a car crash. You just can't like it's interesting, but you don't
Yeah,
agree with it per se.
yeah.
Do you think that it's true, or do you think a lot of people do agree with this stuff?
I think of Candace and Fuentes as, they like you kind of alluded to, they don't really believe in anything. They are chasing clicks and web traffic. I think for a good amount of people who listen to them, they're more of a kind of like an oddball curiosity than someone that people look to as a thought leader. They're kind of like, here in the States. I don't know if you have this in Israel. At the checkout counter at the grocery store, you have these tabloids where it's like, aliens discovered, in the White House, or like these ridiculous kind of trash that everyone knows is not real, but people buy it because it's kind of fun and diverting and silly. And so I think that that's the role that Candace and Fuentes play for a lot of people. Obviously, there are a few true believers in there. I know that Candace has a huge female audience that they're just, the Apostle Paul talks about silly women laden with sins, lured into all kinds of foolish controversies, always learning but never coming to a knowledge of the truth. I think that's a lot of Candace's audience is just like airheaded women. But um,
I'm
yeah,
not gonna
I
say anything. I thought
um,
those women watch The View. No, so they watch both.
yeah, it's kind of like The View. I think it's kind of like The View,
Yes.
just like clucking hens. Um,
I
I
hope
think
you're right. It's
Tucker's a
scary.
little more dangerous, I think, because I think
Yeah.
he is sincere. I think that there's a bit of maybe financial co-opting that's going on, like some actual effective propaganda that for whatever reason I can't see his heart or his financial ledger. For whatever reason, he's pushing all of this foreign propaganda against the West, against the United States and Israel, and he's very persuasive. He's a very persuasive guy, and so for that reason, I remember talking to a conservative friend like 5 years ago, and I was a big Tucker fan at the time. Tucker was always a good friend of the B. He supported us, um, and this friend of mine told me Tucker is one of the most dangerous people um, in conservative media. Um, and I was like, "You're crazy. Are you kidding? Like, you got to be kidding me. Like, seriously?" He's like, "Mark my words. Watch what happens in the next few years. This man is extremely dangerous." And so yeah, I think Tucker's someone to maybe be taken a little bit more seriously. And I can't do much from my standpoint with my little Twitter following, but I can pray imprecatory psalms against him. I can do that. So
But can I just well, we're yesterday or the day before an episode came out with his brother, and by the way, his brother is way less sophisticated than him. In just
Mhm,
he just puts out his hatred out like in the open for anyone who he disagrees with, for Jews,
mhm,
obviously, for Israel, for Americans that he disagrees with. They're all evil. Everything's conspiratorial. And then he goes on to his brother's show and says, with his brother nodding, obviously, that America is North Korea. Literally, he said that yesterday.
yeah,
And people could look it up. He said, America is North Korea, with there's no difference between them. Whatever we said how bad North Korea was, that's America now. So and that was uh, what I mean is to say by that is that his whole show at this point is to put down America and
yeah,
say good things about America's enemies. Like he'll
mhm.
say Qatar is the best. Venezuela is a conservative country under Maduro. He's said
Yeah,
that a few times. He praises Mamdani. He now compared the ICE shooting of that woman more to Charlie Kirk's killing in his newsletter.
mhm.
So, what exactly is conservative about Tucker Carlson at this point?
Nothing. He's gone, and we
So
need
why
to
is he
on the
going to Turning Point and speaking? And so I get, and that's the point
yeah,
that Seth Dillon from your company also talks about the gatekeeping, the need to. It's
yes,
not canceling if you say like this is a person that doesn't have share any of my beliefs. I don't want him on my stage. Why do you think so? If someone was very pro-abortion, I assume Turning Point wouldn't put him on the stage because conservatives in America are against abortion. They believe
mhm.
it's murder.
Right.
It's obvious that you don't put someone who promotes that on the stage that you are paying for and bringing people from outside to watch and see. But Tucker promotes everything that conservatives never stood for, and they bring him to be the keynote pretty much. Why do you
Yeah.
think that is?
I think part of it, he still has a lot of clout and credibility from all the great work he did over the last 20 years for the right and on behalf of our cause. Um, I still talk to a lot of people. You know, not everyone is as steeped in media as you and I are, and I still talk to a lot of people who have no idea what's going on with Tucker. You know, they still think of him as the Fox News guy. Like, hey, oh, he's great. You know, I love Tucker. Yeah, I've listened to his podcast once or twice, but they don't really know how far gone this guy is. I think more and more people are waking up to that, and I think that's a good thing. But you know, obviously, the other thing that's at play in the conservative media space is cowardice. You know, Tucker has one of the largest, if not the largest, audiences. No one wants to alienate that audience. There's money involved. There's people who want influence involved, and you know, I think you know on when it comes to Turning Point, I think there were a lot of people within Turning Point who objected to Tucker being there, but Charlie was adamant about bringing him there. Now, the thing is, I think that if Charlie had been able to see all of the things that Tucker said and did after his death, I think Charlie probably would have kicked Tucker to the curb faster than you can blink. Um, but I think there was a sense to where they wanted to honor Charlie's, you know, one of his dying wishes by keeping Tucker there. Um, my hope is that as Tucker continues to just completely circle the drain, and more people wake up to who he is, my hope is that we don't see him at another Turning Point or CPAC or whatever. He doesn't belong on the right anymore.
Why do you think so? One of the things that there was this whole big controversy, and I think I spoke about actually with Seth Dillon when we did this thing together with him about the Heritage Foundation, which for some reason they didn't even have to get into it. They
Yeah,
decided to put out a video defending Tucker after he had on Nick Fuentes. I actually would love to have Nick Fuentes on, in the sense that then you can bring up all the bad things and try to, you know, be tough on him. But
yeah,
he had an entire hour, I think, of probably more than an hour in his episodes, of just nothing, just
yeah,
propping him up.
yeah,
And so everyone was criticized. A lot of people were criticizing him. And then Heritage Foundation puts out this thing that basically, if you criticize him, then you're canceling him. And we conservatives don't cancel people. Um, how did and then
sure,
obviously Heritage is basically collapsing from within, which actually is
yeah.
very sad. But in terms of the actual topic of canceling versus criticizing slash what we call maybe gatekeeping, how do you explain to people that think for some reason, if you are against, I don't know, platforming is the right word, but what's the difference between canceling and what people were criticizing him for?
Yeah, well, you know, when it comes to you know, Ben Shapiro put this really well that you know that different groups have different roles. You know, obviously a political coalition like Trump's coalition is going to have a lot of different people in it. There are going to be a lot of people who I don't agree with in Trump's coalition. And I'm happy for that. It's like, okay, if you want to vote with Trump or vote with me for Trump, have at it. You know, if you're a racist and you still want to vote for Trump, great. You know, um, but and that's how political coalitions work. But when it comes to a think tank, which is supposed to define what conservatism is, define what our vision for the future should be, you have to gatekeep. You have to be selective about who is in and who is out, what we believe and what we don't believe. And this is the challenge for the right. You know, the left has a very easy job because leftism is decay. Leftism is destruction. That's all they do. That's all they are. And destruction is very easy. It's very easy to have a wide coalition, you know, between, you know, Queers for Palestine and radical Islamists when you're just destroying things. But conservatives, we are trying to build something. And that is very hard. When you're building a building, um, you have to have a blueprint. You have to follow zoning regulations. You have to have the engineer, the foundation guy, the plumbing, the electric, all in agreement and working together and following the same plans, or else the building is going to come down. And so, as we're building, we had this huge coalition with MAGA. We won the election miraculously, a gift from God. God spared Trump's life from an assassin's bullet, not once but twice, and we got him into office. Suddenly, now the right is faced with, okay, what do we want the country to look like? What do we want the future to look like? And that's the fight that we're having. And we can't listen to the extremists on the right that say, for the sake of unity, just shut up and let the groypers in. No, that's not how this works. We have to define who we are, who we're not, what we believe, what we don't, what is right, what is wrong, and you're welcome to join us, but we're not going to just entertain any kind of viewpoint that exists out
Right.
there.
And by the way, Buckley was the one that threw out the John Birch Society and a few of these other crazy people, and he gatekeeped what became the conservative movement as you know it today. So
Yeah.
the conservative movement was built in gatekeeping because they didn't, Buckley and people like him didn't want crazies to be part of the movement, the
Yes.
ideological movement. You can obviously, like I said, no one's going to tell you who to vote for, and if we get more votes, that's great. But we don't want not we because I'm in Israel, but you don't want any movement to be defined by the crazy people that happen to vote for your same candidate. It's just a weird way
Right.
of looking at things. Um,
Right.
and I guess on that point, that you wrote a tweet yesterday or the day before about JD Vance and his inability so far to say, yes, we have a problem. Trump said it. Trump is like, yes, we have anti-Semites and we don't want them. The New
Yeah.
York Times asked him, and Vance, every time he's asked about it, he says there's no anti-Semitism on the right. It's all about the Israel debate. That's what he literally said. Like
Yeah.
when he was asked about Tucker and all these people, he's like, it's not anti-Semitism. It's a debate about how we should be with Israel. But,
Yeah.
like, for example, Ben Shapiro in his speech, and then Tucker in the speech response never mentioned they didn't mention, I think, Israel. Israel was it's part of it, but it's not the defining factor of
Yeah.
people saying, like, the Jews control everything, like Fuentes does, and as Candace says that I think she calls us all pedophiles and I don't know what she says about us. Very bad people,
Yeah.
demons and all these other things.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with Israel per se. Um, and
Yeah.
Tucker has people that support, say Hitler was the Churchill was the villain of World War II, and
Yeah.
that Ashkenazi Jews something with COVID that we were, I guess we were like a conspiracy to kill everyone, but we were like immune or something. So that has nothing to do with Israel, and he refuses to, first of all, disassociate from Tucker.
Yeah.
He actually, I think, invited Tucker, like, in the last week to the White House, and Tucker was
Yeah.
seen with the president at an oil executive meeting about the Venezuelan oil, which he hates the whole thing about Venezuela, he's criticizing the president, saying how bad everything that was done is, and how Venezuela is the conservative bastion of freedom, and then he goes into the White House. How do you explain the vice president, and should we be worried that I know you said you liked him, but
Mhm.
I'm starting to get very worried about him.
Yeah, I will confess I like Vance. Part of it is just the fact that he's an Ohio hillbilly like I am. I've never felt more represented by somebody in politics that, he's my age, he's a millennial. Um, and he's very good when it comes to, fighting back against kind of the media blackmail apparatus that tries to trap him. He pushes back, he's bold about, conservative ideals. Um, I think gosh, and I don't know if I'm just being naive or what but I think that I have faith that he'll do the right thing. I hope that he does. I pray for him. I think that he's in a tough political position right now, and I wish that he would be a little more outspoken about some things. But I think I kind of have to chalk it up that I think he's probably playing a political game right now. I think he knows that he
What's the
has
game?
um, I think he's almost doing a little bit of what Charlie Kirk was trying to do. Maybe naively, maybe it was misguided in some ways, but trying to hold a coalition together. Um, you know, I I don't know what's in his mind, but I think that it seems to me that he's just kind of trying to keep from alienating his base for one reason or another. And I think as a pundit who can say whatever I want and it it has no consequences, it's easy for me to call him a coward for that. But Obama, for example, when he was running, he he pretended that he was against gay marriage. He and so I, I know Trump has done a little bit of that too, playing politics to get elected. Um, he's played it a little friendly with the kind of the far right or alt right crowd from time to time. But when it's come to what he's actually done once he got into office and the way he conducted himself, it was clear that he wasn't on the same page with the anti-Semites and the alt right. And so I think that JD Vance has been given a great perspective in watching how Trump has done things. Um, my hope is that if JD Vance is elected in the next term, that it'll be a continuation of the Trump doctrine. I would hope that he wouldn't change too much of that. Um, that said, I love Rubio. I love DeSantis. Um, the right's about to have a huge war over who's going to be the nominee, and it's going to be really bitter and nasty, of course. But I love all of them, and I I don't want to get too uh, hysterical yet about some of my concerns about JD Vance. I think it's kind of a wait and see, and I think that he'll do the right thing.
And there's still time.
There's still time.
I
Yeah.
guess the problem with the calculus, maybe he is making it, is that people like me, and I'm in Israel, but a lot of my friends in America
Yeah.
will, if he decides to not call out these people, he'll lose the other side of the coalition that he's trying to keep.
Yes.
So
Exactly.
so I think it has a political, even just taking out just morality and good versus evil, all that stuff. If it's you're only looking at it politically, is you're gonna lose the other side. And I
Yeah.
think the other side still is bigger. Meaning I think more
I
people are
agree.
not
Yeah.
Nazis than are. I think more people are not racist than are. And I think because most Americans are good people. They're
Hmm.
not racist like these Fuentes types of people. They're not. They're not disgusting the way they act towards other people like Candace. People aren't the online people. People are
Yes.
regular people. So I think Vance and Vivek wrote a good article in the Wall Street Journal about that politicians should stop reading Twitter X. They should stop because they're not getting the average person's view. They're getting the more extreme online version of people. And
Yes.
and I think that's very important for Vance to know. I don't know who's advising it, but if that's his
Yes.
calculation, he should be making it. I want to ask you about, you're very Christian. You write a lot about your faith, and we spoke before about how many children you have. And in America, I think no one that's not religious would have that amount of children. So
But yeah,
I don't
whenever
know if
whenever I meet someone else that has a lot of kids, my next question to them is always, "Oh, what church do you go to?" That's just the
exactly.
assumption. Yeah.
So where I grew up, the ultra Orthodox. I have friends that have 14, 15, 16 children. So you are like, you have ways to go. But um, can you talk a little bit about, like you said, you're a millennial, you're a Christian. What you spoke about why you feel affinity for Jewish people because of the Old Testament, because of
Mm.
all that. But what do you think of the relation of Jews and Christians in America today? How do you feel that? I guess I don't even know what I'm asking, but
Mm.
one thing that I heard not too long ago, and maybe this will explain, is that a lot of Christian people are looking at the Orthodox Jewish community and saying that the way they live, the way they are able to insulate themselves from the disgustingness of the secular world, the bad aspects of it, is something that Christians can learn from. Do
Mm.
you Does that make any sense? Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think maybe another thing that might, give me a bit of an affection or affinity for the Jewish people is the fact I grew up, in the independent fundamental Baptist world, which is like the American version of ultra Orthodox religion, Um, very closed off, everyone homeschooled, we didn't watch TV, we were very kind of insulated from the world, everyone had a lot of kids, very conservative. And there were upsides and downsides to that. It wasn't all good, obviously. Um, and it's also not a guarantee that your kids are going to turn out right either. We had families with 12 kids, and five of them would grow up to be ultra liberal. And so I've kind of, as I've grown, I've started my own family. I've kind of taken the try to keep the good and throw out the bad, of that. What the my big moment came, I guess, my religious kind of conversion for real. I was raised Christian, but it wasn't until I went overseas. So I was in Iraq for a year. I was kind of taken out of my Christian bubble, and didn't wasn't able to go to church. We had to patrol every Sunday, and didn't really have fellowship with other Christians there. But I had a little Bible that I kept in one of my magazine pouches on my flak jacket, and I just read that. Just when was on guard post, sometimes we'd have like a 12-hour guard post duty that we'd have to do. I'd just sit and I'd read the Bible while kind of scanning the horizon. And the way the scripture spoke to me, and the way Jesus just was so compelling, and came alive to me, really just convinced me fully that, okay, this is real. My faith is real, and this matters, and I really need to hold on to this and fight for this when I go back. And so, um, I think I think that the Jews and the Christians, um, what people need to understand is that we do have this common heritage, that Christians, the teaching of Christianity from the New Testament is that, in by God's grace, not because of works or any of our merits, the Gentiles have been grafted into the olive tree, and um and so our posture should always be one of fear and trembling, and great humility, that we've been able to participate and partake in this story, in the grace of God, with the Jewish people. And obviously, we differ in the sense that we believe the Messiah has come, and that all you Jews need to believe in Jesus. But that's just a part of the conversation. Trying to convince my Jewish friends. I love having I have had like 4, 5, 6 hour conversations with Jewish friends just about the New Testament, and kind of trying to convince them to see things my way. But that's neither here nor there. I just enjoy that. It's fun.
Could I, lastly, so we spoke about the need for people to go to church, and for young people, especially young men that we mentioned that were so disaffected. I think we can safely say that if a young white man in this for this issue, because those are the ones that we spoke about that were so disenfranchised and so depressed by society around them, if they were in church and they were part of a community, and I'm taking even out the God part for a minute,
Yeah.
they would be in a different situation than a lot of them are. Meaning, I think one of the things that Americans, Western civilization at large, but America specifically lost for young people is that they're very alone,
Yes.
atomized. They have no friends. Most of them haven't even, in terms of like, again, I'm putting out religion for a minute, but most of them
Hmm.
don't even go out with women anymore
Hmm.
because they're all watching not nice stuff on their computers. So
Yep.
they're not going out. They're not meeting women. They're not even drinking. They're not, it's not good to do these things for per se. But I'm saying like that's the socializing. You're not doing that. Even in bad ways, you're not doing that. You're just sitting at home all day, eating on the couch and doing
Hmm.
like not smoking pot has become like all day. I'm not like
Yeah.
not trying to be the morality police. I'm just saying like moderation is good and people are just all day with themselves.
Hmm.
Whereas a church would give them people, just
Yes.
the basic function of meeting people, and that makes you grounded. And like, so we live, for example, just I'm just gonna make this into Israel for a minute because that's
Yeah.
where I am. So in Israel, there's no way you can really be atomized the way Americans are,
Hmm.
because everyone here has a lot of kids. And if you look at statistics, even the secular Israelis have at least 3, 4 kids.
Hmm.
So we're the only Western country in the world that still is above replacement rate. But and that's sometimes not so good. But whatever. My point is that you're part of a community. You go to the army at the age of 18, so you meet other people. You're out of
Mhm.
your comfort zone. You're part of something bigger than yourself. And
Yep.
we all feel like everyone wants to kill us. So we all feel like we have something that we're living for. We're
Yeah.
living for that, to protect our people, to protect
It's
our
easy to put
family.
some minor differences aside when you have a bunch of people trying to kill you.
I'm not trying to
Yeah.
say that people aren't hating each other here for political reasons or whatever. I am saying that before October 7th, it's a great example. There was these giant protests in the streets here because of judicial reform. I don't know if you remember that.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then October 7th happened, and the people that are on both sides of the divide went down south and they sat in the same tank, fought the enemies together. A minute
Mhm.
before that, they were about to kill each other because they couldn't agree on anything politically. And
Yep.
I think in America, I'm sad. It's sad because I my family lives in America. I go to visit a lot, and it seems that for a lot of people, they don't have anything. Not
Mhm.
religion, not church, not family, not community, nothing. And then you get to bad places like the places we've talked about.
Yeah, and it's funny because America had a similar moment after 9/11, and it didn't last
Yes,
very
I
long,
was in New York.
but there was that sense of solidarity that we all had together, and there was that sense of very clear delineation between good and evil, and um, but now, like you said, we have people who are kind of disappearing into themselves, and the thing about being a part of a community, especially a church community, is that you choose it, and you end up being around people. We're all sinners, we all are imperfect, and you kind of learn how to live with people who aren't like you, who maybe annoy you sometimes. You got the ladies singing off key behind you, you got the you know and so that's a good thing. Human beings need to be around other people, and be reminded constantly it that we're not the center of the universe, that it's not all about me. And that's when any young man or young woman ever asks me, like, kind of what's your solution for depression if I'm feeling really depressed or down, my answer is usually some form of like, get out of the house. Get out of the house and go be with some people. Force yourself to go to a silly game night that you really don't feel like going to. Force yourself to go to church. Be around people. I mean, that's how we're designed. That's how God made us. God designed us to be in community with each other. And so we should live according to God's design. Where the spiritual and mental
Yeah.
health is.
Yeah. And also people are always they need it's very because you remember when the new atheists started coming out and all these things, and we can be without, and I think, and I think it was Douglas Murray. I don't remember, so don't take me. One of the people told me, maybe it was Eric Weinstein, that we realized at some point he realized that like if it's not godly religion, they're going to go to another religion because
Yep.
people need it. Maybe individuals can be, but as most people need something else, they need it. And so I think, like, if you remember, of course you remember, you had the BLM riots, right? And they were all chanting. That was the first time I realized this. They were like, you really noticed that it became a religion, some of these protests. They were chanting together slogans, almost like prayer. And they were all a lot of times swaying back and forth, like with the chants, like almost out got like a godly experience, but like not to a real God. They were like hierarchies of people, like we have the rabbi, you have the priest. They had like the whites were the worst, so they were like the like the servitude. It was like, and they had sacraments. If you remember, Nancy Pelosi wore these like traditional things or something. Like they had
Yeah,
all of this, and then they had to ask forgiveness of random black people on the streets. There was this whole thing, and then you had the Palestine protests also. So everyone wears the kafia, which so all the religion wears the same, like the same, like traditional garb, and the chanting, all the chanting is the same from the river to the sea. It's like,
yeah.
and most people don't know. They make fun of it. You don't know the river Rotsi, but I think that's besides the point. It gives people meaning.
Mhm.
So I think that when people lose the religion that's good, that gives them a sense of meaning, but also good meaning, they go to something else. And we've seen it over and over. And now we're seeing a little bit maybe on the right, which is very depressing. But I think, I don't know, do you agree with me? Just in general.
I do, and we've even seen a lot of the new atheists, like who was it, Richard Dawkins, come around to this idea that, oh, well, maybe we do need Christianity. Maybe I don't believe, but we need some kind of cultural Christianity for this thing to, because we see what's happening in Europe. Um, with the loss of Christianity, not only comes woke religion, but Islam. Something is going to rush into that vacuum because we're like, kind of like what I was saying earlier, how God designed us to be in community with each other. He also designed us to be worshipers. We're going to worship something. The question is, what are we going to worship? And so, that Judaism, Christianity, and there's also the problem with sin. I think a lot of what drove a lot of the BLM riots was this sense of guilt that people have. We all have it. We know we're sinful. We're fallen human beings. Christianity, um, Judaism, kind of give us the answer to that. We have this avenue to receive grace and mercy from God, and actually have our sins covered and our sins forgiven. And so, when you take that away, people are going to look to other ways of finding absolution, and that's what you saw. And so Europe scares me, man. I don't like
Yeah.
I've
Tell me
joked
about
about
it.
it. I've even seen JD Vance joke about it that like the UK is going to be the first Muslim country with nuclear weapons, and like how
Well,
long
we
is it?
have Pakistan already. So yeah, the
Yeah, well,
second.
yeah, the second, but like how long will it be before you and Israel find yourself warring against European countries? God help us. So
Sometimes it
it's
feels like we're already doing that. So yeah,
yeah.
they give money to all our enemies. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much
So
what we are.
it's really, one thing that I appreciate about JD Vance, for all, the concerns that many of us have about him, is that, he has been very um forceful about what is happening to Europe and the loss of faith in Europe, the loss of freedom in Europe. Um if Europe falls, if it doesn't find its strength again and beat back this Islamic invasion, we're in huge trouble. And so, you know, if we can hopefully we can pray for a revival of Christianity in Europe, true Christianity, not just going through the motions, not holding up a rosary like a totem, but actual devoted, obedient to God Christianity that will wipe out anti-Semitism, that will wash away Islam and create a truly devoted, good Western country again.
Yes, and I have to say that it's true. I feel like the UK, for example, has a Jewish community that's substantial. It's not millions like in America, but I have a lot of friends that ran away from the UK since October
Hmm.
7th because the Islamic protests every Saturday in the center of the capital city of the UK
Phew.
is a scary thing, and people have been arrested ha- for standing and being quote openly Jewish
Yeah,
in public
yeah,
because it antagonizes the protesters to be open to see someone who's openly Jewish. And the police in these countries, and I think sometimes in America it's also been like that, they're so worried about the mob that they punish the peaceful people. And
yes.
and so, but in Europe it's really scary stuff. They just banned fans from one of the soccer teams from Israel that came
Mhm.
to play in the UK. They banned their fans from coming because they were going to play in Birmingham, and that's like a giant Islamic community.
My
And they were
gosh.
scared, it turns out, that the Muslims would come and beat up the Jewish fans. And so instead of
So you punish the Jewish
protecting the
fans.
fans,
Yeah.
they didn't allow people from Israel to watch Maccabi Tel Aviv in playing Aston Villa in Birmingham. So, and now it's a big scandal. But the fact that that was their default position, like we have intelligence that these crazy Islamists are going to come and try to kill Jews. So the solution is to ban the Jews. Like, so the Jews should be in their ghetto, and all the crazy Islamists should be like burning the city down. So yeah, it's really scary. I don't know what's going to happen. But my great hope is America. And sometimes looking at America, you get a little depressed too. And it's amazing to see people like you standing out. And I'm serious. It's very scary.
Thank you.
And the
Yeah.
Jews in America are, some Jews are very worried. Like my dad lives in New York and they have an anti-Semite mayor. So that's
Yeah.
just great. And so I hope that we're coming up to the midterms this year, and you're going to have a lot of the Democrats playing on, we've seen this already, on that the Republicans are friends with Tucker and his ilk among the Jewish community. I think they just tweeted because of this protest in New York that like you had AOC and Mamdani tweeting against Hamas for the first
Yeah.
time
Yeah. They
because they
see an
know.
opening.
Yeah, and so I think Republicans should understand that even on a political level, Tucker's wing is hurting their electorability. So they should take heed. Um, so
I
yeah,
think that's encouraging, though. I mean, as disingenuous and fake as it was, that display from the Democrats of all just in unison condemning Hamas, it suggests to me that the political winds are shifting, that a lot of people realize that they've given too much quarter to these crazies. Um, and I have hope, that as I continue to speak out, others continue to speak out. Courage is contagious, and these crazies will continue to kind of be pushed more and more to the margins. One of the big tests that's coming up here in the states is the midterm elections. We're
yes,
about to see how powerful this kind of anti-Semitic wing of the right actually is, because right now they're trying to spoil elections. In Florida, they're running a Groyper candidate. In Ohio, they're running a Groyper candidate against Vivek. And so
yeah.
I think that we can pray for a resounding MAGA win in the midterms. I think if a lot of politicians see that this Groyper movement is more online than it is anything else, and that they don't actually have any kind of political clout or power behind them to spoil elections, I think we'll start to see less and less of these politicians tiptoeing around and playing footsie with these guys. So we can hope for a resounding midterm example there.
Joel Berry, true pleasure to speak with you. I hope you're right, and I hope we'll see these results soon. By the way, a encouraging thing, they just had like the amount of donations that candidates had in the Florida gubernatorial race, and the guy that Tucker endorsed, Fishbaum, I think his name is,
Fishback.
they're like Roy
Yeah.
Fishback. He got $900 in the last quarter, not like not 900,000, $900. And so, and
That's why
Byron
we
Donalds
say
was,
go woke, go broke, right? Yeah.
yeah, and Byron Donalds has like 7 million. So just the discrepancy is, so it also shows that people like Tucker probably don't have a lot of influence outside of the online world, which is encouraging. And hopefully maybe we'll see, because he just endorsed him, we'll probably get a little bit more, but it's not, he's on the losing side. And so the Republican establishment should push back, because there's no winning with that voice. Like we said, most Americans aren't there. They're normal and sane people, and they
Yeah.
don't hate just because someone is different in these types of ways. And Vivek, with he's not Christian, but he puts out good ideas that will help Christians. So
Yeah.
why, like, that shouldn't be I think, like, his skin color or JD's wife's skin color and heritage shouldn't be relevant to the policies that you want to promote. Just me. Maybe I'm so wrong. I don't know. But Joel
You're
Barry,
exactly right.
true
Thank you.
honor, privilege, a lot of
Thank you.
fun, and keep fighting the good fight.
I'll do my best, my friend. Happy to come on and happy to come on, and talk to you anytime. Thanks for having me.